Next, again, there is another simple one as OLAP cache bus. Means what? That is called as integrated planning. There is a concept called input ready query. If you want, I'll show you one example, but don't get into that. I'll just show you how it works. That's all. There is something called OLAP cache bus. So generally, if you look at the query execution process, when you first run your BEX report, let's say I got a cube and you design a BEX query on it. When you run the query, it first sends a request to what? OLAP processor, and OLAP processor first checks whether do we have the required data in cache bus. If it's able to find, we call it as cache hit, and then it takes it from there and then shows it in the BEX report. If it doesn't find in the cache, it redirects and then it searches for the suitable aggregates. If it finds suitable aggregate, takes it from aggregate and then goes back. If it doesn't find suitable aggregate, then it fires a query on the cube, selects the data, like it is selecting what? How many records? 4 records. These 4 records are transferred to OLAP processor. In the OLAP processor, the records are grouped. You know what is grouping? If it finds multiple records, same category, records are grouped and the keywords are aggregated, and then the result is sent back to front end, and then you get to see the results. So you might have observed when you run the query for the first time, it will be a bit slow. When you run the same query second time, it will be faster because it is retrieving from cache bus. Okay. So what I used to do is in the real time, I used to get high priority ticket saying this query is running slow. High priority ticket ante 2 hours lo solve cheyalannattu. 2 hours lo load chesedi. Because even if I have to solve it, if I'll let analyze the whether it is taking more time in the DB time or what it is, and then I'll let analyze. Nenem chestanante, as soon as I get the ticket like this, I used to run the query, go to canteen, have a coffee and come. I should see the output. I used to close the ticket. Now run the. When I run, it will fill the cache once. So when user runs, she was happy. రోజు అంతే మార్నింగ్ పోయేసరికి టికెట్ వస్తుంది, నేను రన్ చేసి కాఫీ తర్వాత మళ్ళీ క్లోజ్ అంటే వాడు సీరియస్ అయినాడు 4th డే. ఐ కాంట్ గో బట్ రేజింగ్ దిస్ టికెట్ ఎవ్రీ డే అంటే నేనన్నా ఫర్ పర్ఫార్మెన్స్ ఆఫ్ ద క్వెరీ యూ కాంట్ రేజ్ హై ప్రయారిటీ. హై ప్రయారిటీ ఈజ్ వాట్ వెన్ సిస్టమ్ ఎత్తిపోతున్నప్పుడు అప్పుడు హై ప్రయారిటీ. సో రేజ్ అండ్ లో ప్రయారిటీ, దెన్ ఐ విల్ సాల్వ్ ఇట్ పర్ఫెక్ట్లీ. దెన్ షీ సెడ్ ఓకే, లెట్ ఇట్ బి లో ప్రయారిటీ. దెన్ we started analyzing, then we fixed it permanently. Okay. Fixed permanently ante endante we have scheduled one job which will run the query every day in the morning and keep the data in cache. There is also concept like ante ultimately endante if the data is filled into cache, query is going to read it from here, which will be faster kada. So how do you control the settings whether for this query cache should be active or inactive and what it is? Okay. Now if you go to RSRT properties, you will see there's some cache mode bus. Cache ఇంకా వేరే ఆప్షన్స్ రావాలి. Cache is inactive అని ఉంది బస్. When I say cache is inactive, cache this query will not leverage cache. If you say active, it will actually ఇది కాదు, ఇది కొద్దిగా you should get the screen with these options. You should get the options like this. Cache is inactive means what? Cache will not be leveraged by this query at all. It does not store anything in it. Then there's something called main memory cache without swapping. Main memory cache without swapping until let's say your cache would have some limited size, some MB is allocated. Let's say you understand, let's say 1 GB of space is allocated for cache bus. Okay. Let us assume in 1 GB it is able to store output of 4 queries bus. 4 queries output store చేయగలుగుతాను bus. Okay. Yeah. Now what happens? Let's say my complete OLAP cache is filled now. All the 4 queries output are there. Now my user is running the 5th query. It is reading from the database and coming in. It has to store a copy in the cache now, but there's no space, right? What it does use some algorithm saying last used, and what was the query which is not used at all, which was last used, it takes that out, removes that query from the cache and places this new query into cache and then gives it out. అట్లా ఎత్తేసి మళ్ళీ వాడు రన్ చేస్తే మళ్ళీ అగైన్ ఇట్ హెస్ రీరన్ ఫ్రమ్ ద డేటాబేస్. That is without swapping. Okay, and there's an option called main memory cache with swapping. Okay, when I say with swapping, let's say I already have 1 GB, 4 query outputs are stored now. Again, you're running the query now. It does read the 5th query from the database. It has to store that in the cache, but it has to remove some, it has to make some space. What does it finds the last used query, takes that query out, does not remove it completely, it does move that query to main memory, RAM, main memory ante RAM like move chestundi. Again, when user fires that query again another query from this cache is moved to main memory and this query will come into cache. It will be doing swapping between the cache and main memory bus. That is swapping. Without swapping అంటే డిలీట్ అయిపోతుంది. విత్ స్వాపింగ్ అంటే మెయిన్ మెమరీలో పెట్టుకుని మళ్ళీ మెయిన్ మెమరీ నుంచి మళ్ళీ తెచ్చుకుంటాడు. దట్ ఈస్ విత్ స్వాపింగ్ అండ్ వితౌట్ స్వాపింగ్. ఓకే, గుడ్. దెన్ దే సంథింగ్ లైక్ క్యాష్ విత్ ఫర్ ఈచ్ సర్వర్ అండ్ ఫర్ అక్రాస్ అప్లికేషన్ సర్వర్స్. అంటే ఏదంటే చూడు బస్, now in the real time, because of the hardware capabilities required, it will not be single system as server, it will be multiple systems as one server bus. If when you go to SM51, you will have to see how many servers are maintained on it. ఇంజు నాకు ఒకటే ఉందండి, మనదంత సీన్ లేదు కూడా ఒకటే. బట్ రియల్ టైమ్ ఇఫ్ యూ సీ ఇలా 4-5 ఉంటాయి అన్నట్టు. అంటే ఒక్కొక్క సిస్టమ్ నుంచి ఒక్కొక్క హార్డ్వేర్ కేబుల్స్ అన్ని కలిపి ఇట్ బికమ్స్ లైక్ 5 systems together as one cluster node, as one server bus. ఇలా one central instance, multiple dialog instance together we call this cluster node అంటాం, cluster server అంటాం. అట్లా 5 ఉంటాయి అన్నట్టు. అప్పుడే అంటే 5 అంటే 5 డిఫరెంట్ సిస్టమ్స్ కదా, 5 డిఫరెంట్ సిస్టమ్స్ కలిపి ఒక సర్వర్ కదా. దెన్ వాట్ హ్యాపన్స్, ఇట్ డస్ డూ సంథింగ్ కాల్డ్ లోడ్ బ్యాలెన్సింగ్ బస్. అంటే ఇప్పుడు నౌ లెట్స్ ఐ లాగ్ ఇన్ టు మై సిస్టమ్, I can get connected to server 1, server 2, server 3, server 4, server 5 depending on the load bus. Say at 9 o'clock I am logging in. Since my server 1 was free, I got connected to 1 and I have run the query. Let's say it has put the query output in the cache of server 1 bus. After 2 hours I logged out and then again I am logging in at 11 o'clock. Because the server 1 was busy, I got connected to server 3 bus. Again when I run in, but there is already output stored in the cache of server 1, but that is not be leveraged in server 3 now. So do you want the cache to be persistent for across all servers or any one server? That's what you can do. If you say persistency for one server, then in whichever server you got connected, that will be stored only in that cache. If you say across, then what happens? The same data of cache will be stored across servers. So if you are in a single server environment, we will choose saying what? Memory cache with swapping. If you are in multi-node architecture, I will prefer what? Persistency cache with across application server. అప్పుడు నేను ఏ టైంలో ఏదైనా కనెక్ట్ అయినా నా క్యాష్లో ఉండే డేటా అవైలబిలిటీ ఉంటుంది. ఓకే, లైక్ దిస్ వీ కెన్ స్పెసిఫై ద క్యాష్ మోడ్ బస్. ఓకే, if RSRT, if you specifying it is for one query level, but if you want to do the same setting for the entire provider, then current settings, info provider settings, here what is cache, ikkada leave of options, but you should get those also. And there is also a concept called delta caching అని కూడా ఉంటుందండి. For example, I have 100 records in the queue. The cache is being made with only 100 records. Tomorrow you load new data. It does also do delta caching. You don't have to say the data is invalidated and you have to rebuild again. No. Only the delta records will be brought to cache again. We also have a concept called delta caching also. And apart from the query results, what is there in the cache, you need some more data to be retrieved from the target. Only those will be brought in. It's all handled by the system internal mechanism. We don't do anything. Okay, but we can see the cache monitoring, and cache you can see here. What is this? You can go to cache mode and see how much of entries are there. Cache parameters. If you get into this, దీంట్లో ఏ క్వెరీస్ ఉన్నాయని అంటే you cannot see data, but I can see which query is being stored in the cache bus. క్యాష్లో ఏ క్వెరీ అవుట్పుట్స్ స్టోర్ అయినాయో తెలుస్తాను. సపోజ్ ఇఫ్ ఐ రన్ వన్ మోర్ క్వెరీ, Then output వచ్చే డేటా ఏదన్నా మళ్ళీ అంటే యాజ్ సూన్ యాజ్ యూ రన్ ద క్వెరీ యూ షుడ్ ఫైండ్ దట్ న్యూ క్వెరీ హియర్ బస్ అంటే బేసిక్లీ క్యాష్లో ఏ క్వెరీస్ ఉన్నాయో చూడొచ్చు కానీ యూ కెనాట్ రియల్లీ ఫైండ్ ద డేట్ ఆఫ్ ద క్వెరీ యూ కాంట్ సీ దట్ that's your OLAP cache bus. And now say this is fine, but I can't, if I need to fill my cache before my use, so this could be one technique saying if the query is really slow and you have done all the options and nothing is able to work out, so before user runs the query, can I run the query in the background and store the output in the cache and keep it ready for the user performance? Yeah, but you can't expect me to run manually, right? So there should be some process. In older versions we used to use something called pre-calculated web templates. ఇప్పుడు అవుట్డేటెడ్ అది యాక్చువల్గా what is here? There's something called reporting agent అని ఉండింది. If you go to reporting agent అంటుంది ఇది ఇంకా చేయకూడదని, బట్ see actually ఇక్కడ చూడు బస్ దిస్ వాట్ ఈస్ హియర్ వాల్యూ pre-calc template అంటే it will run this query in the back end and store the output in the document or cache కూడా fill చేసి పెట్టొచ్చు అన్నట్టు. But this is outdated now. Actually ఏముందంటే for filling cache all this we was using reporting agent, and previously we also had a concept called information broadcasting అని ఉండింది. In previous versions the purpose of information broadcasting was only to run the query output and send it as an email to the user. Then they moved even these concepts also into information broadcasting now. So if you anything you would like to do scheduling of the report BEX queries in the backend, it is information broadcasting. Either you're scheduling the output to send it an email or to fill the OLAP cache or to fill MDX cache or to do some printing, anything, it is all information broadcasting. So as of now, if you would like to schedule the BEX query in the background or daily and then put the output in the cache, you can go with something called information broadcasting. We'll see that as a separate topic.